Hello, my name is Singh, and I'm broadcasting from New Jersey on behalf of Stanford Online High School students from around the globe. So, hello world. With us here today is Miss Gina Ma. She's the Director of Marketing Strategy and Operations at Lyft. I'm glad to have you here. Such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So you have such a challenging job marketing at such an innovative company. What's the biggest challenge at your every day, whether it be brand awareness because you're competing against other ride sharing companies, or is it getting new drivers? So could you give us a little insight about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a big job, and I think one of the things that's been really interesting about working in this industry has been really just being a part of a brand new industry that didn't exist just 4 years ago. So I think that relates to marketing and it relates to operations and sort of all the different departments that we have here. But I think probably the biggest challenge has been sort of creating something that never existed before, and therefore the rules aren't built out yet. Everything from regulation to marketing to just sort of how we think about growing the business is brand new. So we're a startup sort of within a startup industry, which is a crazy challenge, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, and the ride sharing industry is completely turning like the cab industry like upside down. It's such a interesting perks and benefits. So speaking of that, what's your favorite marketing campaign? Now, I think you've been getting lots of publicity for the T-Mobile Tuesdays campaign you have. So do you have any other favorite ones?
I do. I have lots of favorites. It's hard to pick one. It's like picking a favorite child. But I would say one of the things that I really love about what we've done at Lyft is a lot of our experiential marketing. And I think that's one of the things that we've been really famous for. You may have seen recently that we did a big activation with Ghostbusters. We do a lot of entertainment marketing, and more specifically, we do a lot of work that really tells the story of what the Lyft experience is about when you're inside the car, and really focuses on the connection between people, so between drivers and passengers, drivers and drivers. It's all really emphasizing the unique experience that you can only get in a Lyft. And so I think probably it's hard to pick. There are a couple on my mind, but I think one of my favorite things that we've done is our Undercover Lyft series. And that's something that we've always dreamed of doing that. And I've actually been here a little over 4 years. So we launched just about 4 years ago. And back in the beginning, we always had this dream of how cool it would be if we could get a celebrity or someone famous in the car, and how cool that would be for our passengers, and really just showcasing how different our drivers are when they get into a Lyft car. So I think one of my favorites, which you may have seen, was the Shaq video where Shaq went undercover, and actually it was totally his idea to come up with these really cool costumes, and he improv'd and was hilarious. But it was a lot of fun for us to have him driving, picking people up. People were sitting with him, and not everyone knew it was him right away. So it was super fun to really surprise and delight our passengers, and bring to life this really amazing experience that actually happens every day in a Lyft, but to take it to that next level by surprising people with someone as outrageous as Shaq in a costume.
Yeah, and interestingly, yesterday I took a Lyft. It was in New York City because of the campaign you have that if you take 3 rides, you get $50 off for the next 10 rides, $5 each. So it's working clearly.
That's so wonderful. Where are you right now? Are you in New York?
New Jersey. We were interviewing J. Crew CEO yesterday in New York, so I was in the city.
Wow.
So it's an amazing, it's like project in a way. So they're saying that GM, you have a huge partnership with GM, and they the first fully autonomous car for GM will be electric, and they're saying it'll be launched on Lyft. It was in the news a couple of days ago. And Elon Musk also in his Tesla master plan released last week that when people aren't using Teslas, they can make money off them by autonomously being with helping others. So what do you see as the future of Lyft and just entire industry in general? As people move away from owning cars and just letting them idle for the rest of the time. They say you only use them for 10% of the time or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think it's actually even lower. I think the stat is actually more around 4% of the time. So even crazier that cars are just sitting around idle without people actually utilizing them. So that's something we actually talk about all the time. And I think just to take it a step back, One of the reasons I came to work here 4 years ago, and I think the reason that most people join Lyft is really about our origin story and our founding vision, which is all about solving transportation inefficiency. So the way that I think about that, and kind of the easy way to describe it, is when you drive around in the US, you'll notice that most people are by themselves in a car. So maybe one other person in the car at best, but it's very uncommon to see a full car with people in every seat. And so our founders have been thinking about this. Actually, they've been working on it for about 10 years. And our CEO, Logan, grew up in Los Angeles, where he was traumatized by traffic, grew up just really suffering from, just sitting there in a car and feeling stuck. And in college, he took a trip to Zimbabwe, where he saw transportation being treated very differently and people sharing rides. They had these Kombi buses where people were piling in. It was super efficient. And so when he came back to the US, he was really struck by the difference in how we think about transportation here and how cold and isolated and inefficient things were. So from the beginning, we have always been about figuring out how do we fill those empty seats in cars, and how do we make it so that we can actually take cars off the road by being more efficient about how we move people in this country. And so we also think about that from the hospitality perspective. Our other co-founder, John, came from a hotel and hospitality background. So fundamentally, when you bring those two ingredients together, it's really about connecting people with the larger goal of changing how we get around and taking cars off the road and making the world a better place. So anyway, I think that's such a powerful part of what Lyft is doing. And I think to connect back to your question about autonomous, we see that as an even more exciting next step about how we really bring that vision to life. And so if you imagine, people aren't going to be owning autonomous vehicles and keeping them in their garages. It's really going to be about tapping into a network. And so that's exactly what Lyft is building. We're building that network where everyone has the app on their phone, they tap a button, and then an autonomous vehicle will come pick them up. So then when you think about that and take it a few steps further, you don't have to design cities around highways and parking lots and all these things that we have today that make it really hard to have, to get around and to have a good experience in a city. So we imagine that cities will be designed differently. There's like a whole future world that I think is super exciting to sort of dream about. And that's actually coming up really soon.
Certainly, and some of those aspects about, getting multiple people, I think that's incorporated in Lyft Line. Is that the one where, multiple people can be in the same car and the cost is cheaper?
Yep.
So, it's starting right now. It's, having an impact. And we know the advent of drones, Amazon talking about delivering drones, coffee, or imagine Starbucks. It's the future, it's there, it's close.
Yeah, it's a lot closer than I think we realized. I think even a year or two ago, we didn't realize quite how close everything was going to be, but it makes it a very dynamic place. And again, when you think about 4 years ago, nobody else was doing peer-to-peer ride sharing.
So moving on to the segment about high schoolers, because that's where our main audience is. Did you have any particular teachers or courses that you remember that still impact you today, or something that struck with you, and helped you in life?
I do. So when I think about high school, what I actually really remember most sort of vividly are the experiences that I had outside the classroom. And it's, I was racking my brain trying to think about, what were my favorite classes in high school? And for me, the memory that really stands out is my experience doing journalism. So we had a high school newspaper. I was editor-in-chief eventually, and that was something I did throughout my experience. And I think that what is so powerful about doing extracurriculars and getting outside of the classroom is that you really connect to the world around you in a more meaningful way. And that's not to say that academics aren't important. I spent a lot of time studying and doing homework and all those things. But I think now as an adult, when I can reflect back on that experience, I think I realized how much I learned about myself through just putting myself in really unfamiliar situations, taking risks, having that responsibility of publishing information about people and having to make real life decisions. So to me, I can say this now that I'm really far away from high school. I think those are the experiences that are most memorable, and, to sort of get outside of the world that feels comfortable and known, I think is really the most powerful way of learning.
Certainly. So, on the topic of looking back at high school, is there anything, you wish you'd have done, spent more time on a certain topic, or, pursued your passion in a certain area, or just any advice in general for the current high schoolers, because so they can learn from, your experience and, better prepare themselves for the future.
Yeah, well, I do have a thought on that. I think so. I think the sort of stock answer that you'll probably hear a lot in Silicon Valley is learn how to code. I feel like everyone probably is already doing that anyway. That's something I never got to do, but there's still time. But I think for me, I recently listened to this podcast about guide dogs and how people train guide dogs. And the core principle of training a guide dog is all about spending that first year as a puppy, exposing the dog to as many new experiences as possible to build confidence and really help the dog be curious about the world around it. And I've been thinking about that a lot in my own life. And I think when you ask me that question, that's immediately what comes to mind is that, if I could go back and redo my experience or have some, unlock some magical 10 hours a week extra, I would totally immerse myself in as many new experiences as possible. And I think another thing that I reflect on when I remember high school is there's so much pressure to specialize and to focus and, really get good at one thing. And I think that's way too early in life to have that kind of pressure. And I hope for other, high school students that are out there that they can feel that freedom to explore and be curious and just immerse yourself in as many experiences as you can possibly have at an early age, because you'll have plenty of time to specialize. I'm still figuring out my life path, and life is so much more interesting when you can be open to just what the world is offering around you. And to be honest, that's sort of my story of being here, of both joining, but also the past 4 years here. I've had probably 6 or 7 different roles here. And most companies, in the old days, you would have one job and try to keep it forever. And here it's all about adapting with the needs of the business and just having that fortitude and attitude to persevere and contribute and put yourself in an environment where you may not know the answer right away.
Yeah, wow, what a great take on the subject. So now moving on to the fun part of the interview. If you could select one person from history and just have a conversation with them, from history, or we're leaving it open up to present day, who would it be?
Well, so maybe I have 2 answers. So if I were to go back in history, so my favorite artist is Frida Kahlo, and I would just love to sit down and talk to her. And specifically, I would be so curious about what her experience was like being a female artist in a man's world at that time that was so unusual, and being in Mexico and all the things that she experienced. And then to add to that, I watched President Obama's speech last night and was so moved by his message, and I'm just a big fan in general. So if I could meet one person today, it would definitely be him. Interesting.
So our next one is, if you had the Staples easy button, what task would you delegate to it? Is there anything?
Definitely doing the dishes, hands down.
So now we have a short this or that segment. If you could answer in a couple words, would you be willing to participate in it?
Sure, I'll give it a try.
Would you rather be able to stop time or fly?
Definitely stop time.
Online shopping or shopping in a store?
Shopping in a store. I'm a little old school.
CEO of any company other than Lyft?
Are
you going to say Uber? Just kidding.
No, definitely not, but good one. I might say Airbnb. It's very like-minded. It's sort of our sister company. I love Airbnb.
Would you rather have 1 wish granted today or 3 in 10 years?
I think 3 in 10 years.
Interesting. So would you, is there any place that you want to visit, but you haven't visited yet?
Really the entire world. Let's see. I'm really curious about Morocco. I would love to visit Morocco.
And our last question, early bird or night owl?
Definitely early bird. I fall asleep really early.
I sleep late at night. So we'd like to thank Miss Ma here for graciously sparing her time here at Pixel Talk and inspiring not only the Stanford OHS community, but youth around the country and perhaps even around the world. Thank you so much for your time. We sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.